If you want to take control of your emotions and start making better decisions, you need to do this one thing: master the art of practical emotional responses. We've all been there, overreacting to a situation, letting our emotions dictate our actions, and later regretting how we responded. But what if I told you that you can stop letting your emotions control you and instead respond in a way that actually aligns with your long-term goals? In today's video, I'll be sharing 10 powerful habits that can help you control your emotional reactions based on the philosophy of pragmatism. These strategies are practical, effective, and designed to help you handle life's challenges with a calm and clear mind. Ready to take charge of your emotional world? Let's dive in. Sure, I can craft a script in accordance with your requested steps. The focus will be on controlling emotional reactions from a pragmatic perspective. The tone will shift from light-hearted to deeper philosophical content, evoking curiosity and relatability while exploring each of the first 3 headlines in detail. Number 1. Pause to reflect before reacting. We all know what it feels like when emotions take over, whether it's excitement over a new opportunity, frustration during a tough day, or even those moments when a simple comment sends us spiraling. It's as though, in an instant, everything around us becomes a trigger. But have you ever stopped to think about why that happens? And more importantly, have you considered the impact of your immediate emotional reactions on your long-term well-being? Take a moment and think back. Recall a time when you acted in the heat of the moment. Maybe you said something you didn't mean, or you reacted impulsively and regretted it later. We've all been there. It's easy to get caught in the whirlwind of emotion, to let it take control. But what if, in those critical moments, instead of reacting, we paused just for a moment to reflect? Imagine you're in the middle of a conversation. Your coworker or friend says something that rubs you the wrong way. Instead of snapping back, you take a breath. You don't let that initial frustration dictate your next words. Instead, you give yourself the gift of pause. This moment of reflection allows you to make a choice based on a practical, thoughtful response rather than a knee-jerk reaction. The pragmatist philosophy teaches us that our emotional responses are not necessarily helpful if they aren't guided by reason. It's easy to react emotionally, but pausing before responding is where growth happens. By allowing yourself time to think, you're engaging in a more calculated approach. It's not about suppressing your feelings. It's about allowing your emotions to work for you, not against you. Now think about the times when you didn't pause. Maybe it was a heated argument with a loved one, a frustrated moment at work, or even an online discussion that escalated quickly. How often do you look back and think, "I wish I had just taken a moment to breathe"? This is the core idea of pragmatism at work. We are constantly interacting with our environment, and taking the time to reflect before acting leads to outcomes that are more beneficial and rational in the long term. Number 2, choose practical responses. Let's be honest, life isn't always perfect. Things don't always go according to plan. We deal with setbacks, challenges, and frustrations, and sometimes it feels like it's all too much. But here's the thing, emotional reactions to these situations are not fixed. They are shaped by the way we choose to respond. Have you ever had a stressful day where it seemed like nothing was going right? Maybe you were running late, or you got some bad news, and the weight of it all felt unbearable. It's so easy to let our emotions take over. We lash out, sulk, or maybe even shut down. It's normal, right? But when you step back and consider it, what does that approach really achieve? Does reacting in frustration make the situation better? Does it solve the problem or merely prolong the discomfort? Pragmatism teaches us that it's not about suppressing your emotions, but about choosing responses that work. Choosing practical responses means selecting the path that leads to the most productive and beneficial outcome, rather than simply reacting based on how you feel in the moment. When we shift from emotional reactivity to thoughtful, practical responses, we empower ourselves to handle situations more effectively. Think back to a time when you chose a practical response instead of a knee-jerk emotional reaction. Maybe it was in a professional setting where a disagreement was brewing, but instead of raising your voice, you calmly proposed a solution. Or maybe it was at home, where instead of reacting in anger, you chose understanding and empathy. That's pragmatism in action, the recognition that emotions are part of us, but our response to them is within our control. And in every situation, we have the power to choose how we respond. Now, here's something to think about. How many times have you reacted emotionally only to find yourself feeling worse afterwards? By choosing practical responses, we engage with reality more effectively. Emotions, as natural as they are, should not dictate every moment of our lives. The more you practice choosing your responses, the easier it becomes to respond in ways that serve you, practically, wisely, and with intention. Number 3, adapt emotions to outcomes. How often do we hear the phrase, "go with your gut"? It's a common piece of advice, and it's often offered as if emotions are the best compass to guide our decisions. But when you stop to think about it, emotions can sometimes cloud our judgment, especially when we don't give ourselves the chance to think through the consequences of our reactions. Picture this. You're facing a big decision, maybe about a career move, or a relationship, or even a financial choice. The initial emotional response might be excitement or fear, but how often does that immediate gut feeling turn out to be the right choice? In many cases, it's not the emotions themselves that help us make the best decisions. It's how we manage those emotions and adapt them to the reality of the situation. Emotions are powerful. They can fuel our actions, motivate us to strive for goals, and guide us in the right direction. But emotions are also reactive. They often arise in response to external events, and when they're not managed, they can lead to impulsive decisions. Pragmatism suggests that rather than letting emotions dictate our outcomes, we should adapt them to fit the situation. This doesn't mean ignoring our feelings. It means allowing them to inform our decision-making while considering the real-life consequences of those decisions. Reflect on a time when you adapted your emotional state to the situation at hand. Maybe you were nervous before a big presentation, but instead of letting anxiety overwhelm you, you chose to reframe it as excitement and energy. This shift in perception turned your emotions into a useful tool rather than a barrier. In pragmatism, this shift is crucial. It's about acknowledging that emotions are real, but also about recognizing that they don't have to control your actions. By adapting your emotional response to the reality of the outcome you want, you ensure that your feelings work for you rather than against you. This is an essential part of emotional control, recognizing that emotions are not fixed. They are fluid, and with the right mindset, we can change the way we feel in response to our circumstances. When we align our emotions with the outcomes we desire, we are not simply reacting. We are responding with intention, crafting a path forward based on practical, achievable goals. Number 4, shift focus to gratitude. Gratitude, the simple act of recognizing the good in our lives, may sound cliché, but what if I told you that shifting your focus to gratitude could have a powerful impact on your emotional reactions? In our fast-paced world, it's easy to get caught up in what's going wrong. The missed opportunities, the struggles, the challenges that seem to pile up day after day. But here's the thing. When we focus on the negative, it can create an emotional spiral that feels impossible to break. It's like walking around with a weight on our shoulders, every little problem seeming to add more strain. But think back to a time when you focused on the things that were going right, no matter how small they seemed. Maybe it was a good conversation with a friend, a moment of peace in a busy day, or simply the fact that you woke up to a new opportunity. Shifting your focus to gratitude rather than lingering on what's wrong can create a profound change in your emotional state. The more you cultivate gratitude, the more it becomes a part of how you see the world, allowing you to find peace even when things aren't perfect. Here's how it works. When you choose to focus on gratitude, you're intentionally creating a space where emotions that fuel frustration, anger, and anxiety can't take root. Instead of spiraling down a path of negativity, you're shifting your energy toward positive emotions. It's not about ignoring difficulties or pretending everything is perfect. It's about grounding yourself in the reality that, even in tough times, there are things to be thankful for. Pragmatism, at its core, values what works in the real world. And in the real world, cultivating gratitude has been proven to improve emotional well-being. When you practice gratitude, you don't just change your mindset, you change the way you interact with the world. You make it easier to respond to challenges with calm and clarity, rather than letting frustration or resentment take the lead. So next time life feels overwhelming, try shifting your focus. Ask yourself, what am I grateful for right now? It's a small shift, but it can have a profound impact on how you handle what comes your way. Number 5. Let logic guide reactions. We've all experienced those moments where emotions surge up unexpectedly, whether it's a frustration with a situation, a heated disagreement, or a moment of self-doubt. And in those moments, the logical part of our brain sometimes takes a back seat to those raw emotions. It's completely natural. We're human after all. But when emotions are allowed to dictate our reactions, we can often end up making decisions we regret. Now, think back to a time when you let your emotions rule the moment. Maybe it was a conversation with someone you care about where you said something you didn't mean. Or perhaps it was in a situation where fear or anxiety clouded your judgment. It happens to all of us. But what if, in those moments, you chose to let logic guide your reactions instead of emotions? This is where pragmatism offers something useful. Pragmatism isn't about suppressing emotions or ignoring them, it's about using them in a way that makes sense and leads to the best outcomes. When you take a step back and ask yourself, what makes the most sense here? Or, what is the most practical course of action? You bring logic to the forefront of your decision-making process. It's not about being cold or detached, but about ensuring that your emotions align with what's most effective and beneficial. By allowing logic to guide your reactions, you open the door to more thoughtful, intentional responses. It doesn't mean you stop feeling. Of course, your emotions are valid, but rather you allow them to inform your choices without completely controlling them. This is how pragmatic thinking helps. It empowers you to respond to life with clarity and practical wisdom, ensuring that your emotional reactions lead to outcomes that are in your best interest. Remember, emotions are powerful, but they don't always provide the clearest path forward. When you let logic lead the way, you're able to stay grounded, think through the situation more clearly, and make decisions that benefit you in the long term. Number 6. Listen first, react later. How often do we find ourselves reacting to a situation before fully understanding it? Whether it's a conversation with a friend, a disagreement with a coworker, or a disagreement in an online discussion, how many times have we jumped in with a response before taking the time to truly listen? It's a common reaction, and one that often leads to unnecessary conflict and miscommunication. But what if the key to controlling emotional reactions lay in slowing down and listening first? Think about a time when you didn't listen carefully. Perhaps you misinterpreted someone's words, responded defensively, or assumed you knew what they meant without giving them a chance to explain. When we don't take the time to listen, we allow our own emotions to dominate, and that can lead to misunderstandings and unnecessary conflict. On the other hand, think about a situation where you took the time to really listen. Maybe you were talking to a friend who was upset, and instead of jumping in with your own thoughts, you simply listened, giving them space to express themselves. Or perhaps it was a work situation where a colleague was frustrated and you didn't react immediately. Instead, you let them finish, and only then did you respond thoughtfully. In those moments, you allowed your emotions to take a back seat and made space for understanding, for clarity, and for connection. This is where pragmatism offers practical wisdom. In order to respond effectively, we first need to truly understand the situation. By listening first, we gather the information necessary to respond in the most practical way. Listening allows us to fully comprehend the situation before reacting, which in turn helps us make more thoughtful and deliberate responses. In the world we live in, it's easy to become reactive. It's easy to assume we know what someone else is saying or what they mean. But when we take the time to listen fully and actively, we change the way we approach conflict and challenge. Listening first creates space for clarity and insight, which leads to responses that are more effective and less driven by emotion. Number 7, acknowledge reality. Avoid overreaction. It's easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of our emotions, especially when life throws us a curveball. Maybe something unexpected happens, like a sudden change in plans, an unexpected setback, or a piece of news that throws us off balance. In those moments, it's almost instinctual to react emotionally. We can feel overwhelmed, anxious, or frustrated. But here's where pragmatism offers us a powerful tool: the ability to acknowledge reality without letting our emotional reactions take over. Take a moment to think back to a time when something didn't go as planned. Perhaps a project at work went off course, or a personal goal you had set seemed to be slipping away. In those moments, it's easy to exaggerate the situation in our minds. Our emotions often amplify the problem. We might feel like everything is falling apart, even when the reality is far more manageable. The key here is to acknowledge the situation as it is, without succumbing to the emotional spiral that often follows. When we overreact, we're allowing our emotions to color our perception of reality. We make the situation feel bigger than it truly is, and when we do that, it becomes harder to find practical solutions. Acknowledging reality means accepting what's happening without embellishment. It means seeing things for what they truly are, not worse than they are. This doesn't mean ignoring the challenges or pretending everything is fine. It means approaching the situation with a level-headed, rational perspective, allowing you to handle it with a clearer mind. Pragmatism teaches us that what matters is not the emotional storm that comes with every setback, but how we respond to that setback. By acknowledging reality, you can deal with the situation for what it is, not how it feels. When you can separate your emotions from the facts, you allow yourself to make better, more informed decisions. So next time life doesn't go as planned, try to take a step back and assess the situation without letting your emotions drive you. Recognize what's real, and you'll be better equipped to handle whatever comes next. Number 8. Turn setbacks into growth. Setbacks, failures, mistakes. We all face them at one point or another, and it's easy to feel defeated when things don't go the way we expect. Maybe you've worked hard on something, only to see it fall apart at the last minute. Or maybe a personal goal feels just out of reach, despite all your efforts. In these moments, it can be tempting to throw in the towel, to let disappointment take over, or to react with frustration. But what if we looked at setbacks not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth? Think about a time when you faced a setback. Maybe it was something as small as a missed deadline or as big as a failed project. Initially, it probably felt like a huge disappointment, something that left you questioning your abilities. But upon reflection, did that setback ultimately teach you something? Did it force you to adjust your approach, learn a new skill, or gain a new perspective? In many cases, setbacks are the very things that push us toward personal and professional growth. They teach us resilience, problem-solving, and the ability to adapt. Pragmatism values outcomes, real practical results that make a difference in our lives. And often, the most significant growth comes not from success, but from learning how to navigate and overcome setbacks. When you view setbacks as opportunities rather than failures, you shift your emotional reaction from frustration to curiosity. You ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this experience help me grow? This mindset allows you to embrace challenges rather than fear them. By reframing setbacks as growth opportunities, you begin to take control of your emotional response. Instead of succumbing to feelings of defeat, you empower yourself to take actionable steps toward improvement. Every failure becomes a stepping stone toward a better version of yourself. And while setbacks might still sting, they no longer have the power to dictate your emotional state. They become fuel for your personal development. Number 9. Extract lessons from stress. We all experience stress. Whether it's from work, relationships, personal goals, or life's inevitable challenges, stress can sometimes feel like an overwhelming force in our lives. And when stress hits, it's easy to react emotionally, becoming anxious, frustrated, or even resentful. But what if, instead of seeing stress as something to avoid or fear, we viewed it as a valuable teacher, offering insights that could help us improve? Think about a particularly stressful situation you faced recently. Maybe it was a demanding deadline, a difficult conversation, or a series of events that felt completely out of your control. In those moments, it's easy to get caught up in the stress itself, to feel like it's all too much to handle. But take a step back. What did that stress reveal about you? What lessons could you extract from the experience? Often, stress is a signal that we're pushing ourselves toward something important, or that there's something we need to adjust or change in our approach. Pragmatism encourages us to focus on the practical and useful, and stress, though unpleasant, can offer valuable lessons. It forces us to confront challenges head-on, to reassess our priorities, and to find solutions to problems that might otherwise go unnoticed. Stress doesn't have to be a negative force. It can be a catalyst for growth and change. When you shift your mindset and start to extract lessons from stress, you begin to use it as a tool for improvement. For example, perhaps a stressful work situation forced you to improve your time management skills, or maybe a stressful personal situation helped you realize the importance of setting boundaries. By extracting these lessons, you turn stress into something constructive. Instead of reacting emotionally to stress, feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or defeated, you can approach it with curiosity and a desire to learn. In doing so, you gain greater emotional control and find value in even the most difficult situations. Number 10. Align reactions with goals. We've all had those moments where our emotions take over, pushing us to react impulsively rather than thoughtfully. Whether it's frustration over a missed opportunity, anger at an unfair situation, or anxiety about an uncertain future, it's easy for our emotions to get in the way of making decisions that align with our long-term goals. But what if, in every emotional reaction, you could take a moment to pause and ask yourself, how does this align with my larger goals? Is this reaction helping me move toward what I want? Imagine you're in a situation where you're feeling overwhelmed, perhaps due to a work challenge or personal setback. You're angry, frustrated, or stressed out. It's all too easy in these moments to give in to your emotions and react in a way that feels good in the short term. Venting, blaming, or even avoiding the problem. But when we react impulsively, it often pulls us further away from the goals we're working toward. In contrast, taking a moment to reflect on how our emotions align with our goals can bring clarity and prevent us from derailing our progress. This is where pragmatism can be a game changer. Pragmatism is all about practical outcomes. It's not just about feeling good in the moment, but about choosing actions that lead to the best long-term results. In every emotional reaction, we have the opportunity to align our response with the larger goals we've set for ourselves. Whether it's in our career, relationships, personal development, or well-being, each decision we make has the potential to either move us closer to our goals or push us further away. When we let our reactions be guided by our goals, we make more intentional choices. For example, instead of reacting angrily in a challenging work situation, you might pause to assess the best course of action, one that will contribute to your growth and professional success. In a personal relationship, instead of reacting defensively during an argument, you might focus on finding a solution that strengthens the connection rather than winning the confrontation. The key is not to suppress emotions, but to use them as signals that guide us toward thoughtful responses that serve our greater purpose. Pragmatism teaches us that our actions and reactions are part of a larger, interconnected process. Each moment is an opportunity to take one step closer to where we want to be. So, the next time you feel a surge of emotion, take a pause. Ask yourself, does this reaction align with my long-term goals? Will this help me achieve what I truly want? By making this a habit, you not only gain more control over your emotions, but also ensure that your reactions are leading you toward the outcomes you desire. This final point encourages viewers to reflect on how their emotional responses align with their long-term goals, making decisions more intentional and practical. It wraps up the series by emphasizing the importance of emotional control, guided by pragmatism, to help viewers stay focused on what truly matters to them in the long run. If you've made it this far, drop a thumbs up. This shows you're part of the rare 0.01% who are serious about taking control of their emotional reactions and making real changes in their lives. It's not easy, but the first step is always the hardest. You've already shown you're committed to growth, and that's what sets you apart. If you're truly serious about transforming your mindset and aligning your reactions with your goals, make sure to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you're joining a community dedicated to practical self-improvement. Don't just stop here. Keep pushing yourself to be the best version of yourself, one step at a time.